markets in small producers. So we dedicate ourselves to social innovation that has to do with public policies, be they regional or municipal. I've been working for the past 8 years for a municipal association called Web of Terrae, which is made up of municipalities that try to do things aimed at agroecology, creation of social vegetable gardens, and among other things, in 2015 we created a manual of complementary currencies from the point of view of agroecology and the municipalities. And with that experience, I think it's also important to mention a moment, right, Luis? In December 2015, we were able to get the Green Party in the European Parliament to support a gathering of complementary currencies and people who knew about currencies. We were about 30 people from Spain from different currencies, including Mario, Luis. We went to share with some of the people in the European Parliament to request a white book that either the Commission or the Parliament would support something that we consider to be a collective benefit. Up until today, the majority of the experiences with currencies are still based on the will of the population in what you will see is called the C2C among citizens who support each other through time banks, mutual credits. I do a job and calculate it, and then I exchange it with another person. These are very voluntary initiatives, but I think that after this, since 2012, which was the first meeting in Villanueva of Beltrú, 8 years later, we need a certain institutionalization. At least that's what I've come to propose. What we have designed on this Friday morning, when it has to do with currencies, where people participate in a voluntary way, most people will come this afternoon and tomorrow. We thought about Friday precisely thinking about giving room to organizations which have responsibilities in the government, municipal or autonomous, in the region of Extremadura, and which think that the mechanisms must be changed by which assistance is being given to final beneficiaries or giving aid so that the policies of buying and selling of regional products, the production of proximity foods, can be done. The currency is, and I've been dedicating some 30-odd years to the development of the rural countryside. To me, it's the most satisfying of public policies, but as of today, there isn't sufficient or even a minimum institutionalization. So the workshop's objective is to lay out for you, firstly, some of the types of main currencies quickly to eliminate those that make no sense to consider them from the point of view of public policies. Because we're going to consider, I insist that this workshop is about public policies, main currencies, and those that are more present in local or regional administrations. Second, the main source of financing to be able to achieve these complementary measures comes from the structural funds, and in the case of the region of Extremadura, the area that receives a higher percentage of aid and investments that are done come from the structural funds. The structural funds are open. There are other European Community countries, member states, which are doing with structural funds other complementary currencies. In Germany, there are different experiences, so we're going to look at some of the foundations of these structural funds and see that there's an open door so that in the rural development plans of the regional development plans of Extremadura, Castilla-La Mancha, or of any other region, these experiences can be implemented, and for some time now we have known that they have a favorable impact. Later there will be a presentation by José Luis on Sustainable Development Objectives 2030 by José Luis Fernández Pacheco, who is a professor at the University of Extremadura, and I'd like to finish my presentation. The theoretical part shouldn't be more than 25 minutes with a workshop. I think that currencies are so difficult to explain that the best way is to dramatize them. When we have, in these last 10 years, we have rehearsed and explained different ways to explain this. The most effective and the least amount of time used to get people to understand this better and make them feel closer to what this seems is to play a role game. So I have brought a number of roles to be assigned. I'll ask that some people come out and form a big semicircle, and we'll practice how a currency backed up or promoted by the local administrations with more or less support from the region in something that we are theorizing that we call in two lines, a white line and a yellow line. There are two ways in which an administration can promote a currency in their territory, and I'd say right now that Zafra is one of the 3 municipalities in all of the state that has obtained support and presence from the local administration and the regional administration. The presentation of the types, since it was thought that there would be people who wouldn't come specifically to the meeting because they participate in currencies, but because they come from local administrations or from local administration bodies. Could you please raise your hands, those of you who are council people, town hall technicians, or from AUPEX, the Association of Popular Universities of Extremadura, or from the agency? 4, good. It's for you that this workshop is specially designed so that you could see the possibilities. There's an image, I think I first saw it from Miguel, I don't know its source. It's an image in which the flow is represented. Money, after all, is a flow. Ecosystems work with energy flows, and economies work with a flow of money, and it's necessary to analyze the efficiency of the flow of money. In the case of the euro, the first of the cases, it has been studied from Moneda, a German foundation, that €1 that enters a home via salaries, most of it goes first of all to the big collectors of capital, the telephone company, the bank where you go to pay the interest on your home. It goes to the purchase of a vehicle. It goes to the purchase of fuel. It goes to the purchase of an important part. And as soon as it comes into our account, an important part of the money, that can be around 50, 80, 90%, automatically goes to a big company, and it doesn't circulate in the community. It comes in via salaries, and it exits the local community of Zafra. A way to preserve so that the flow of energy generates more movement in the territory is to establish a mechanism that is not exactly the currency that is accepted on the outside. And once you have it, and this is very important conceptually, once I have the currency in my account, that it be the first one that I spend. It's a very common error in the currencies that we are evaluating in all of the state, that people get the currency and consider it a relic and they keep it in a box. That currency is not for saving. If you're a collector, then save it, but as soon as you receive a Varamedí, or as soon as you receive a Romero, or you receive a Mola, the objective is this is the first currency you spend the next day. It's not a currency for saving. It's a currency that a colleague who worked in these currencies 20 years ago, Maria del Rio, she called them cookie currencies. It's a currency that as soon as you get it, you eat it, you use it. It's very important. And now we're finding out that, for example, in the case of the Varamedí in Zafra, people who have Varamedí save in a box, or you'll see later that the currency of Irati, where there is a community of wastes that is emitting currency rewarding the good behavior of the people. So the objective is that it jump around a lot. When a currency gives the complementary currencies that have been analyzed by, for example, Cinque Hour in Germany, it is calculated that it jumps 6 times inside a community before it is converted back into euros. What does this mean? That it generates 6 more interior gross product. I know that the interior gross product is one of the indicators we'll have to review, but as of today, it's the one of that economists use. So a complementary currency tends to jump 6 times. In other words, it generates 6 times more wealth in the territory than the euro that enters and flows out of the community. Is this or isn't this a tool to do territorial development, rural development, regional development? It's probably the most powerful of them. There's also a question, we should say almost ideological, that is also from Moneda. You can see below the incomes from families, from those who have low incomes, less than the interprofessional salary to those who have the highest incomes. And here you can differentiate in each type of income the interests that are paid and the interests that are earned. A person with little money pays little interest but doesn't receive anything. As you increase your income capacity, the middle classes pay a lot of interest because you have you have a lot of possibilities to request credit. You pay interest, but on the other hand, you earn very little because maybe you have a retirement account or you earn a little. The reality is that the monetary system is designed so that the majority of interest ends up accumulating in the upper classes. In other words, the factor of money issued on types of interest acts like a destabilizer on family income. So complementary currencies, one of the things that it expects to do, aside from not having interest, is about spending them as soon as possible and try to help re-stabilize. There are in other parts of the world magnificent experiences on this topic. Another of the issues worth considering is the difference between the financial capital, which we know what it is, it's money, banks, financial byproducts, and it's a bubble with the risk of exploding, and every certain amount of time it does explode, harming above all those who have less. Would we be capable of understanding that the functioning of a community and wealth depends on two types of capital? The financial, which you must know how to handle it cautiously, and the social capital, which is the trust that people generate among themselves in a community. Complementary currencies can depend on financial capital, but what they are going to do above all is reinforce that other dimension of social capital, and a sustainable planet will probably be a planet that the virtualities of financial capital corrected and abated. If it doesn't collapse before, they stabilize with the abilities to trust and the generation of flow within the community, the recovery of a neighborhood and other dimensions. They are wealth that generates wealth, and although it doesn't count in the gross interior product, it's a key factor in the compensation. The most powerful gymnasium in which to apply the social capital are the complementary currencies. In other words, it's where we can generate strength to look for alternatives to a financial system that is trembling. Enrique Montesa couldn't come. I've recognized and borrowed these images that he prepared for the presentation we did in Brussels. A currency is a very complex thing because it can depend on who issues it. It's issued by a government, and we'll call those G. It's in English. When it's a government that issues it, it could be issued or designed by the consumer, which is C. It could be designed and moved among businesses and companies. And we're going to find a lot of different currencies depending on who is leading it, and this is a key aspect. On the other hand, there's a series of issues that have been brought up, like who issues the currency and who will lead, how it's backed, and we're going to leave aside a lot of types of currencies because basically we'll consider that there are three types of currencies according to money, or the way they are backed with social capital or financial capital, like we saw before. Type 1 currencies, later Jose Luis will talk about them, is simply the trust between two people. 30 people get together, we have about the equivalent of 50 euros among us, and we start to exchange. Are there euros? No. I trust that I am going to give you services up until 50 currencies. There's not a single euro. It's simply a barter. They are bartering structures. The second is a barter that is backed by euros or by currency, and the third are those that are completely backed by euros. In other words, he who doesn't put euros on the table can't begin to play. And when we talk about public administrations, the French case has been definitive, and it's generating what we could label a jurisprudence. In France, the currency of mutual credit, the local administrations haven't been able to participate. On the other hand, in France, it is completely accepted that completely backed by euros. Also, from the currency of Santa Colombe de Granyamette, for over a year, they were suggesting to the Bank of Spain what we can do so that the Bank of Spain, first of all, I'm not going to talk about this because there will be time later on the topic of electronic money, but it must be backed by euros, that behind paper there must be something that backs it. So first, the public administrations, be they regional or municipal, we're going to concentrate above everything else in the possibility of currency that are euros and euros. 100 euros backing 100 Varamedís. 100 euros backing any of the other currencies that can be created. Although there are exceptions, for example, Vilanova y la Geltrú is a currency that arises from a citizen movement, typical citizen. They have obtained that there be an ordinance in City Hall that accepts the payment of fees using the turuta. It wouldn't be an exceptional case. Hopefully it will develop more. We've tried it up until now and we haven't been able to. Congratulations for having gotten it, and it's also a model to have in mind. Here then we start to see the combination. It can be a currency designed by businesses so that businesses can use it, which would be the case of Sarda in Sardinia or the famous beer in Switzerland. Only businesses can participate, and it establishes mutual credit among them, or the turuta, or the many social currencies that would be inter-citizenry, or between citizens that trust the workings. We're going to concentrate in this case on those administrations regional of local issue the currency, thinking about benefiting the businesses. It could be the case of what the Páramo movement is doing in Zafra, City Hall, to promote the local commerce inside the city. Think about the businesses, the commerces. Another possibility is when the government thinks about the citizenry, and we're going to do it in the workshop. Would it be possible that the social bonds or the social aids has been done in the Barcelona City Hall? Later Susana will come, or as the City Hall of Santa Coloma de Ramanet offers the workers of City Hall as citizens to get their salary partially paid in a currency that businesses will accept. Then you're thinking about issuing a currency that benefits different cross-sections. That's the model that we're going to use to do the presentation about the currencies. This is the job we did with Reterae for the local action group. Does anyone here have anything to do with the local action groups, which in Extremadura are strong, with LEADER? Well, LEADER is one of the methodologies that probably has more possibilities to support and use complementary currencies in regional spheres. This would be a typical currency, citizen to citizen, a barter market in which la pita is used. It's similar to the case of the puma, and we'll have some information on the puma. They are currencies that start out slowly, but there comes a time when they are able to grow on the social capital, the trust a person has in the community in which he is going to offer his products or services. There are banks that have been created with this system of mutual credit. These are the nano credits of 300 pitas. With the pitas that are gathered, these allow a loan in euros to the different businesses. It's an experience of microcredits from the citizenry. They loan euros, and each of these businesses 300 euros, which isn't much, and these businesses return it in pitas. It's a system of loans, of microloans that has a lot of possibilities. This is being done by the citizen movement. The automatic communities don't have the power and generation of structures of loans accessible to small businesses, to the companies. Well, these are possibilities that we think are worth pursuing. The puma would be a mixed currency. Later you'll see it. The turuta, which is one of the most interesting because it's a mutual credit between the users. But the project, the turuta, decides that it will issue 10,000 turutas to support a social vegetable garden or to recycle waste. So it issues the currency based on the trust the community has that the criteria is good for everyone. You work and they deposit into your account this money, and you then use it with the rest of the neighbors. It would be a system between citizens that ends up being opened, the two means in English, and ends up being opened to the government through that ordinance by which it accepts the payment of some municipal fees thanks to the currency. One of the currencies of reference that this year, 2018, is the third in the ranking monetary mass issued in Europe of those that are backed by euros. Euro to euro is the Bristol Pound. There are about 78,000 Bristols in circulation at the end of 2018. It's a currency that starts out being designed by the citizenry. Immediately, City Hall takes it up as its own. The council people get paid their subsistence allowance, part of their salary, and that it clearly opens to the local businesses. I think they have around 500, 800 businesses that accept the currency in the area of Bristol. The mayor is paid part of his salary in this currency. We're not talking about silly things. It's not a mutual credit in a bartering market, but something that is institutionalized. The second currency, masa monetaria, in circulation in Europe is the Cinque Hour in the south of Germany. It's the name of a lake, and it's around the equivalent of 700,000 euros backed by euros. There are businesses that 50% of their billing is done in Cinque Hours. Among others, the famous bakery that comes out in several videos. It's a currency that starts with the anthroposophic movement, people connected to an alternative educational system who are receptive to the participation of businesses here. The administrations participate in a very secondary role. Another of the currencies in this case with respect to waste, since waste management is a municipal responsibility, it's a public responsibility. We think that it's an area where it will be easier to introduce the complementary currencies for the implementation of public policies. Later we'll have two presentations from colleagues. One is the MOLA currency. It's a citizen currency in which the Madrid City Hall hasn't wanted to get involved, but we'll see the details of how it works. It's a C trying to get the municipal government involved, but the municipal government doesn't get involved, and C trembles. Later we'll see the case of Liratic. It's a currency designed by a community of waste in which it implicates the citizenry for waste and the businesses that later accept that currency, and we think that the future is going to be what in European terminology is called PPP, the three Ps, public-private partnership. In other words, alliances between public and private. As of today, I submit as a hypothesis. I don't know if it's the conclusion of this decade of reflection or the hypotheses to work thoroughly through the next decisive decade. There's a lot at stake here up to 2030, not only the topic of climate change, but financial stability, and in many other areas. The key is going to be between the alliance of what is social leading and designing, because this is where social innovation is the public administrations that ally themselves and are capable of balancing and contributing from their abilities, and then the businesses and companies. The currencies that are functioning, in our opinion, are where these three are present. When a currency is put into operation by only one of the members, except those businesses that have the biggest currencies in the world, those are currencies among businesses. The remainder of currencies need a public alliance, private. And this is the number one currency, number one in the ranking, the Eusko. It's a currency that I consider to be a very good reference to apply in the case of the future of Extremadura. It's a currency that arises from citizen movements, from commerce that want to use the Basque language. In other words, there's a symbol of identity. There's social capital connected to linguistic heritage. They get the support of City Hall of Bayona. Right now they have 5 people working, paid by the public administration, but with the web created by an important social structure, 1 million euros in movement in 2018, it's number one in ranking. The key, a strong alliance between cultural citizen groups and administrations and city halls that are giving their support and allowing there be hiring similar to what Irene is doing with Varamedí. Without Irene's role, a lot of currencies collapse. We have a decade of experience. You need a lot of hours of voluntary work to maintain a currency, and they are usually fragile. There are many other B2B currencies, those between businesses. Among the most important are the webs Sardex and Werbank. And here we're not talking about 1 million euros, which was the maximum of those that are backed by euros in public and private. Here we could be talking about 100, 200,000 million euros year transactions between companies, completely legal. Well, let's move on to the second part and then immediately to the workshop. I'm going to go over this quickly, but what it wants to stress is the structural funds that are FEDER, the European Fund for Rural Development, with which the motorways have been financed, the Via de la Plata motorway, with which industrial areas have been financed in the previous period before 2013, 2014, up to the crisis. with which fiber optics have been financed in a lot of municipalities. The circular economy should be financed, or an economy low in carbon, aids to a company that buys state-of-the-art equipment in Extremadura. FEDER is directed above all at public administrations and more companies that invest. The European Social Fund is the one that is committed to the area of training the unemployed and to support policies for groups that are in danger of being marginalized and active employment policies. The European Social Fund is specifically about employment. FEDER is about rural development, the one that finances the investments of a farmer. It finances the local action groups so that they can help a local tourism business make an investment. They are public funds, and many of these lines of financing, I would say, have been evaluated some time ago, are obsolete. They're old. When a pharmaceutical company or any other type of industry wants to remain in the game, it must dedicate 3-4% of its earnings to research and development, right? Nobody doubts that a company can stay in the vanguard if they don't invest in research and development. Well, the public administrations have a problem. It's that they don't have lines of research and development, and the public aids are in bad shape, sincerely. They're not being executed adequately. They have problems in some cases because their structures are very rigid as far as the contribution of the money to the assistance that the beneficiaries don't sign up for. So it's necessary to innovate, and in fact the structural funds leave open the possibility, the structural funds of investment that right now are in effect, are from 2014 to 2020, are going to continue to be working until 2022 approximately. And now the new structural funds are being designed. Since there have been important European projects in this last decade about currencies, I would bet that the rules of the structural funds, the European Social Fund especially, and maybe FEDER, that they begin to recognize the possibility that part of the money being injected into the economic system via the complementary currencies, because I think that this is one of the things that could happen in the next 3 or 4 years. If the European regulation, any of them, the use of these tools was not explicit, complementary currencies, payment mechanisms, or mechanisms of payment and financing, if these terms don't appear in a clear way, us to grab to tell the regional administrations we can do it. There are communities, there are regions in Europe that have made currencies. In other words, it's not prevented. Hopefully it'll say it explicitly, but as of today, these payment mechanisms are not prevented. This is the regulation of the European Fund for Rural Development, and I have chosen some phrases that are being used right now that is in effect until 2020. Rotating character financing so that assistance can be more sustainable in the long term. A currency is not sustainable in the long term if it makes 6 jumps in a community. A currency is not a way to inject a rotating system of wealth between the parts. It's not necessarily a microcredit. These policies be integrated with respect to innovation, with the objective of doing rural or territorial development priorities in the European community. Haven't we said that this betters the development indicators because the number of transactions increases instead of the money generated leaves Zafra to big companies? Be employed to satisfy specific necessities of the markets and by a profitable means. All of these terms will be protected inside the proposals that the complementary currencies make. Convenient financial instruments with the goal of helping, for example, students for the creation of jobs, the mobility of workers. Can't a currency be made to facilitate the sustainable mobility inside the region? Would it or wouldn't it be included? For social insertion, could assistance be given from city halls like is being done in San Juan de Alnafarache or like they do in Santa Coloma de Ramanet? Or the social undertaking? All of these things are left open, and the biggest part of the budget that is handled in Extremadura is connected to the structural funds, aside from education, healthcare, the payment of the public function of the workers. The remainder are resources co-financed by the European funds. We have an opportunity to implement these kinds of innovations, financial instruments, including microcredits, guaranteed funds, youth employment initiative backing the fight against unemployment. It's one of the things that we are trying to support so that it can be done from the Varamedí. Distribute using Varamedís the prize from a contest of the undertaking of circular economy. Circular economy is one of the key words in FEDER. Everybody has been using it. You hold a contest of prizes of the undertaking of circular economy, and the prize is given in Varamedís. What are you guaranteeing? That the prize of 2,000 euros in Varamedís is going to generate 2 times 6, 12,000 euros if the community knows how to use it, of gross interior product inside the community in which the prize was given. This stimulates huge possibilities. To conclude the second part, these complementary currencies are a synergetic form to support groups that are at risk, that are a priority with social funds, for example, or employment opportunities, which is also a priority in FEDER, the Rural Development Fund, to reduce rural depopulation. Would it be possible for people who remain in or who come a new settler or who remain in municipalities with less than 400 inhabitants? They are given an income in a complementary currency. It doesn't have to be the equivalent of 1,000 euros, but if someone lives in a town with less than 300 inhabitants, for example, or 1,000, or what's decided, they'll have an income in a complementary currency of the equivalent of 200 euros a month, or 100 or 50, or even if it's an anecdote of 20 euros to set the population. 20 euros that they can use in town, 200 inhabitants in the commerces of Zafra. So these are synergetic factors. Let's focus on the assistances. Low carbon economy, I think we'll have time later, or the circular economy. They are synergetic tools for rural development. And now is the moment to do a practical case and invite you to take on some roles. Let's hand out papers and let's start. Since this is a workshop for public administrations, I'm going to hand out roles, specifically a municipality, someone who has or feels like doing the duties of social services. It comes with a check for 20,000 euros to be able to finance the currency. Yours. Come with your chair over here. We're playing with fire. Social services, another administration, culture. Gonzalo, are you here? Want to do it? Because as a preview to the Varamedí, half of the monetary mass that functions in the Varamedí, correct me if I'm wrong, Irene, if my memory fails me, it works because from the services of culture of the city of Zafra, its city hall, the citizenry has been offered a discount. A discount that could be what, 10 or 20 euros? Sometimes up to 50%, but thanks to the discount, the councillorship of culture, there have been a lot of people who have bought Varamedís with euros. In other words, they have linked part of their income to a currency that later will circulate around the commerces of the community. Waste management. Who's up to doing waste management? The area of waste? Okay, come on up. All of them come with a check for 20,000 euros, okay? So that you can reflect on how to apply it. We've said that it's a type G currency, so they are the ones. The councilorships have money. There might be a councilorship that says, I'm not interested, this is silly. But once a councilorship begins, the music starts as to what a complementary currency is. We're going to need a bank. Is someone up to being the bank? You're all going to have to do it. You're not too many in the hall. Can we choose the bank? Can you choose the bank? Yes, of course. Well, since you're not up to the task to be the bank, I'll leave it. I guess it has a bad reputation. I'm going to hand out commerce roles, okay? Territorial, commerce, arts and crafts, small industry, farmer, restaurant, a commerce. That's a bookshop, which is one of the cases of how best the Varamedí functions, and one about food. And now you have to be neighbors. Lorenzo will be the bank. It's indispensable. It'll have to get better, no? It has a bad reputation. Okay, now I'm going to hand out to some of the commerces, businesses, 1,000 euros. These are yours, a minimum salary. And now the question I ask you. That's your monthly income, let's suppose. Currencies backed by euros are based on the USCO, and the majority of them have to start from a fact that the population is willing to understand what it means. Take the 1,000 bill and think of how much would you be willing to every month regularly exchange it for the local currency. Let's suppose it's the Varamedí of Zafra and we're going to be immersed a few days in Zafra. How much can I dedicate monthly for the purchase of food? Well, maybe food and some paper stuffs. I'm going to try and exchange every month of my 1,200 euros into Varamedís. That's how the EUSCO works. That's why it's reached 1 million euros, because there are workers who have decided that in their salary, that monthly, there is going to be 200 euros in EUSCOs or Varamedís to buy in the public market or the bookshop, in the gas station that's participating in the system, and you create a club of people who share the currency. Every time this income passes from one to another, you're creating twice the gross interior product than if we used euros, to simplify. I think this is one of the keys. So what I'm going to ask is everybody think about those of you who have this bill. What amount do you think would be reasonable to divert to a system of a complementary currency? What part of the monthly income could you divert to a system to change models? Break off a small piece of paper, and on the back you write the amount. 100, 200, nothing. Justify nothing. I don't believe it. This is a hoax. Somebody's going to keep it for sure. Whatever you want. Don't feel obligated. This is what we call the white line. That's why the bill is blank. What does this mean? It depends exclusively and fundamentally on the population, the citizenry. In the meantime, you can think of how you can, with that check of 20,000, divide it up in the neighborhood. It can be with discounts, like you've done. In some form, City Hall has removed income thanks to those discounts. And later the bank has to think about the opportunities this creates, okay? The role playing is so that each of you can incorporate the role you have been assigned. Does somebody want to say something now about how much income from this 1,000 white line they would divert from private income to buy currency regularly? I would like to divert 100%, but it's a three-dimensional topic. What can I buy? What necessities can I cover that my city offers with the currency? The more necessities that can be covered, the more I can divert. So if I don't have this information, I can't make an optimal decision in my case. I wrote 50%, but I don't know if this is realistic, and I hope it is because we're propelling local currencies. Complementary currencies. Our ideal is that all of my salary, or almost all of it, be destinated to this. In Zafra, there are 50 businesses. In some way, there are 15 that are active, but 50 that are signed up and which would accept the Varamedí currency. It has been work. To get 50 is a year of work, but oh well, it's done. Taxes, IBI tax. In Zafra's case, no. We should have had the secretary auditor here. We've been waiting to speak to the secretary. The secretary auditors in Zafra are thinking more about what the responsibility is and not getting involved in new areas. I'm in charge of waste in the City Hall of Zafra, the fees you can pay of waste. Okay, annually, monthly. We think annually. I've done the math and it goes up considerably. 150 euros. Do you accept the fees? Yes. Culture doesn't have fees. Waste accepts fees. The fees for waste in Spain is around, on average, 80 euros a year per home, which isn't bad. There are autonomic communities of around 150 euros and autonomic communities, towns at 17 euros a month. Does someone else want to? I'm going to talk about a personal case. I'm a farmer. Their feed, consumables, those 1,000 euros, I can hardly divert 100, but knowing that there are a lot of farmers who can help me, and I can also eat, I think I can reach 300 euros. My family's food and the food for the animals. Cereal. That's the income that monthly, the highest, that someone is diverting to the Varamedí in Zafra. A bookshop that is receiving around 300 equivalent Varamedís, and he has learned that it's not about exchanging them back to euros, but to use them. Buy beverages, at the printers, at the market. In Zafra's case, the case of someone who receives 300 and uses 300 is already done. Anyone else want to share their experience? I'd like to add that the experience, if you're proactive, you generate more proactive movement, so it requires an active citizenry, not passive, and the more it moves, you cause it to be more accepted. So you take on a social commitment that you're an important component and you are active in the system. I'm going to increase my number of currency. Somebody else? I'm the bookshop commerce. Since I have 2,000 euros, and I thought of diverting 500, but I thought Is that too much? But seeing the success of the bookshop and the possibility that I can spend it in restaurants on culture, I divert 500. But that's because I had 2,000. But if I only had 1,500 would be a lot. I was able to be generous with the funds I have. If not, I couldn't. I wouldn't invest 50%. Anyone else? Miguel? I have food commerce, and I have to admit I can't get fish here in Zafra, so I have to look for other suppliers in Euskadi, Galicia, Cádiz. Here we're not lacking ham, olive oil, beverages. So I can, with some luck, pay using Varamedí's to other commerces. And well, for my personal leisure, if there is music, if something is done, I could also pay these things. Well, maybe we would also need a local beer, but that's another topic. Something happened to me this morning. I went to pay the hairdresser, and they said they have that they no longer accept Varamedí's. Juan's place? Yes, Juan's place. He said he doesn't want more currency. He has 300, he has enough, and he doesn't want more. The currencies where I've participated in, this has happened. With a problem like that, what do? We take a list of the commerces. How much do you dedicate to consumption? Here's a list of those which will accept it. It's the same case of the bookshop. La Industrial here in Zafra. It took them half a year to learn that. It's the psychological mechanism of a business. We have a perfect example here. In the beginning, we'd take the Varamedí's and exchange them for euros when Irene would pass by. He thought that it was about accepting Varamedí's and exchanging them for euros. But he realized after a few months that once you got Varamedí's, not to exchange them for euros, but give them to another business, so that he could give it to another, and that takes time for a business. Everybody takes time to understand this. This type of dynamic helps to understand that the more people who are willing to participate in the social capital they trust in the system, the stronger the system will be. The EUSCO is at 1 million euros a year. I insist, we're not doing science fiction. The situation in the French Basque Country and the situation in Extremadura is not the same. But does anyone want to say something else? Because if not, we have to move on to the yellow line. You understand the white line? Good. I'm going to roleplay also. It's not me, but my role. Since I don't get a direct benefit for me, I'm going to exchange 20 euros because of the discount in cultural events. Because when you buy in the big companies of internet, telephone company, electricity and all of that, no, that's the case of 80-some% of the users of Varamedí's in Zafra. Exactly that one. I'm not going to exchange my euros if I get a discount. It's working with a white line restricted practically by discounts on behalf of the administration, or there are about 15 people with an average age above 50 years who understand it, and more or less regularly they go to the bookshop on Seville Street. What's it called? Thenfor. They go to Thenfor to exchange euros for Varamedís, but it's only 15, you know. They know they can buy oil, and they have established what are the 4 or 5 products, and they change the quantity. But it's only the 15, the hundreds of users that have used the Varamedí. Well, let's move on to the yellow line. What's the yellow line about? It's the part of the money that a councillorship decides to establish and how to distribute it to the population. You have 20,000, let's suppose. You have this stack. That would be, if the councillorship of social welfare decides that part of the income they're giving to high-risk groups, they want to give it in the currency. For waste, if you decide what amount of the 20,000 you want to back, and for culture the same. In the case of culture, you can break it up into little pieces because you want to consolidate a good practice. It's a discount. So if you're going to take out 2,000 tickets, if you're going to lose or not earn, you remove it. And now I give you the ball and ask you how you want to distribute that among the population so that the population receives it via 2 lines. The white one, which is their own conscience from their own income, and the yellow, the public discounts that they feel that is backed. The waste service of City Hall is valuable to City Hall. We have to externalize the service. It's of bad quality because, of course, the companies that compete reckless, and finally that influences the quality of the service. On the other hand, we know that waste has value, and we know that there are problems with the management of waste, recycling, etc. What could be interesting would be to know if we could make micropayments to the different neighbors in the community who separate their waste at home, and see if City Hall can take charge of another municipal entity, could take charge and establish a collection mechanism that would be economically viable to make small payments to the residents. Later you'll see a case that we're developing with the community of waste management in Navarra. Monica Duende will tell you plastic waste is being bought at 2 iratis for 5 kilos of plastic, non-container or wrapping plastic. That's one way. In the recycle center, you buy plastic, and the person who brings the recycle center his plastic very well sorted, electronic and electric waste, who brings the waste already sorted to the recycle center, he gets a yellow line, a discount. Organic material. In Navarra's case, they are studying giving discounts of 30 euros a semester to those homes that want to participate. Who's willing to participate with separating their organic waste and depositing it where they are told? It's a little more time costly than leaving it in a container. Of the businesses and people who are in the hall, who is willing to get involved in a door-to-door collection where they can open the bag and see if you're doing it correctly? Because in the case of Navarra, if they do it well, they get the 30 euros a semester. But if there are any problems, like putting a diaper, you get in a plastic bag, you put in a plastic bag, then you get penalized up to the point of not getting anything. You would be willing to participate, getting discounts of 30 Varamedís a semester. If you want to distribute it, write down the homes that want to participate so as to collect whatever type of waste you decide, organic or not. It could be a recollection service like in Euskadi. On Mondays, plastics are picked up. Tuesdays, organic material. Wednesdays, paper and cardboard. Thursdays, electrical waste, and Friday, organic material again. And whoever wants, I give them discounts. It's a synergetic factor because we're bettering the separation of organic material at the time we're injecting money into the territorial system. Do they pick it up at your house or do you take it? It depends on the system that's decided. In the case of the Irati, with the mobile recycle center that goes around the market, and the people hand in their waste, this month 130 Iratis were given out. It's not much, some 9 tons of plastic a year they are recovering, but for the rest of the fractions, it's a door-to-door pickup service, but that's a technical question that belongs to waste management. We'll study it. In Catalonia, there is the Turuta. Not directly. They didn't do it. We passed the information on to them, but they didn't do it. And that said, well, we'll recover. Use the currency for discounts. Social services. Is there a beneficiary of social services in the room? Do you dare to do the model of San Juan de Analfarache that Lorenzo has experience with because they use the click coin to give credit? We take very seriously the well-being of people, and we understand the well-being of the population in a broad spectrum. From social services, what we're going to do is for next year, 20% of subsidies and aids will be given directly in social currency so that people can use it. And so it can have an impact on the city and also for those who voluntarily wish to expand that percentage to 40% maximum. There will be a credit of this income so that they can have a little more buying power, 20% mandatory up to 40% voluntary. We're also going to open a line of microcredits for social economic projects based 100% on complementary currency. That's our project. You come from there? No, I come from... Oh, okay. Well, Gonzalo, if you want to tell us the real experience of the Varamedí, because in your case, the role coincides with the job that you did with the Varamedí. If they give me 20,000 Varamedís, it's a sign that the budget is going to grow. There are programs. For example, this Saturday, we have a performance that's worth €6. And if you pay with Varamedís, it's half. This type of impulse of the social currency to convince the inspector, convince the mayor, convince everyone that we're going to make 50% less. When you charge a public price, you don't charge all the fees that the development of a performance entails. It's worth a lot more. You have to pay the appearance fee, the General Society of Authors, pay for posters, sound and light technicians. It's worth a lot more than just the fee. The expenses are more, but in this case, the earnings are less. It diminishes in the economic area. We're giving back to the people a value and an impulse towards that social currency because Irene and Luis tried through their departments, inspection and social services, but there was no possibility. And if the city hall hadn't gotten on board somehow, how do you support this project? How do you give example to the business and commerce sectors that you have to propel this currency? We realized it. There was a festival last year, and we had a good discount in the season tickets of the festival. And this year, people are coming to the youth house where the Varamedí office is located, where we sell the tickets. You can exchange directly there also. But many people are coming with their Varamedís. They've foreseen this, or the advantage that if they have never exchanged before, we have Irene who automatically explains the advantages of this initiative, and she gives it a credibility that is quite interesting, because automatically people realize how good it is and their doubts are taken care of, and they leave much more convinced than if they were simply to go and exchange. So the objective to promote culture was that City Hall, the youth ID card, discounts for retired people. In this case, we have never gotten these things with intervention. Directly, I told the mayor, I didn't request it in writing, no. We're going to do this, and he said yes, without regulations, without intervention. We've forgotten about the public fee models that have been applied to the theater as far as their fees, or you have to charge an entrance. You're still not paying teachers, artists in Varamedí? No, their fees are in euros. It's inevitable because they are companies that are not from here. The one for tomorrow is from Córdoba. They'd have to be here to spend it here, or the digital part. The main objective was to increase the circulation of the Varamedí in the street. What we're trying to do now is what City Hall earns in Varamedís, they don't exchange it into euros, but they apply it to social assistance. It's an idea that I've used up the time of the workshop that is at your disposal to use it. It's not too complicated. We hope that it's a good tool to stimulate the understanding of what these currencies are about. I just want to say that Luis and Irene are working with AUPEX, the Extremadura Association of Popular Universities, and with to see if in Extremadura the experience can be done by which City Hall is told, if you put in 10,000, there will be regional resources to put up the other 10,000. Something similar to what is being done when credits of 50% to the yellow line and another 50% to the white line when it comes to applying fees to the discount, and the same. And the same for City Hall when it says if I put up 10,000 or 5, the regional government will put in the other 10. All parts agree, and the same for waste, the line of the circular economy. This is one of the areas of work where it is expected that Zafra's experience spreads to other municipalities of the area to a regional currency. Sorry, Lorenzo, I used up all the time, but the bank is wringing its hands. Thank you very much.